The Massachusetts economy continued to outpace the nation, according to the latest from a UMass Donahue Institute report and the Federal Reserve Bank in Boston. More jobs were added in Massachusetts in the first 3 months of this year than in the entirety of last year. But what does this mean for this region? I spoke with Rick Sullivan, the president and CEO of the Western Massachusetts Economic Development Council, to find out.
The trend is all still the same, but certainly things like the unemployment number is higher out here, and some of the other numbers in terms of wage inflation for workers is less than you're going to see in the other part of the state. Because really, to put it in a total context, the unemployment rate in Mass, which I think the report said was right around 3%, some of the latest numbers are actually around 2.9. I mean, that takes you all the way back to around 2000 during the dot-com, right before the bust. So, historically, this is a really low unemployment number, even in this region, but certainly in Western Massachusetts, the unemployment number is a little bit higher.
Yeah, and to quote the report, it says the state's unemployment rate stood at 3%, which you just said, in March, and is near the all-time low of 2.6% during that dot-com bubble, which is what you were referring to. And there was a Mass Live headline from earlier this year that said Massachusetts gains 11,000 jobs in January, records highest population to job gains in any state in 2018. So what does that mean for us?
So I think, I think the state has done a really good job over probably the last, 10 to 12 years of investing in sectors that have been really smart. So when you look at biotech and pharma and clean energy and IT, those are jobs that are all growing, so that really Massachusetts has started to become the center of all of that activity. So the trick here in Western Massachusetts, because a lot of that is already centered in Boston and Cambridge and Somerville, is to show that we have a part to play in those sectors. So whether it's the manufacturing component of that, which is really a center of excellence for us here in Western Massachusetts, or whether it's things like cybersecurity, where you have a lot of our colleges and universities getting into that part of those sectors, which are relatively new. Those are places where we can get to the business table in Boston and bring those jobs back here to Western Massachusetts.
Where does marijuana fit into this?
Well, I mean, each community has certainly handled that a little bit differently. I think the mayor in Holyoke, Mayor Morse, has really been probably out in front the most of all of the different communities. So in terms of cultivation and looking at his mill buildings, as when you get into aquaculture and some of the other techniques that are out there, he has definitely been the leader here in Western Massachusetts. So it's an opportunity. There certainly are a lot of logistics that need to be worked out in it, such as federally, the banks are not really able to come to the table and be partners because it isn't legal at the federal level. So they're very skittish, and rightly so, in terms of the regulations there. So, it's a dance that's going to, continue here for a while till they kind of figure that out. But each community has handled that a little bit differently. But, it's an opportunity because of the regulations in Massachusetts is very strict in terms of cultivation, where it can happen, how it can happen, in all of the rules and regulations. So that is certainly an opportunity if communities want to take part in that opportunity, and clearly places like Holyoke have.
And as we see maybe some more of the rules and regulations, Springfield, for instance, is looking at a number of potential applicants interested in the city. But as that comes to bear and more communities are figuring this out, do you think that, 5 years, we're using our crystal ball here, 5 years from now, we'll see more jobs in Western Massachusetts because of that one industry, or is it tough to say?
I think there's a possibility. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a panacea that it's going to ultimately dramatically overnight change the economy of Western Massachusetts. But, certainly, agriculture in general is something, particularly when you look at Franklin County, in parts of Hampshire County, agriculture is still a part of our economy. And, while marijuana kind of stands by itself, it is still ultimately cultivation and, is going to be part of our economy moving forward, and it may be a larger part than it has been before. So, I wouldn't have that be the only thing that anybody is focused on, and I do think that we've got bigger opportunities in terms of manufacturing and IT to play a bigger role with those types of jobs, and that's really where a lot of our colleges and universities are focused right now.
I was thinking about population as it relates to people you need to employ. Preliminary census data came out and looked good for Massachusetts overall, 82% increase in terms of population. But when you look at the Western Massachusetts data, decreases in population in Berkshire County and Franklin County in particular. So you have fewer people to employ in those areas. So is that skewing job data?
So you also have the situation where in Hampden County, really the growth that does show, and it does show some growth, certainly not as big as the state, but most of that is through immigration, and new residents, moving in from other countries.
Yeah, it was about 3.2% growth there.
Yeah, and most of that is through immigration. So, so when you put that all together, the labor pool itself is certainly, smaller. So that brings up, training and workforce training, which is why I really think that one of the biggest opportunities for us here in Western Massachusetts moving forward on employment is our great colleges and universities. And we are very fortunate here to have a sector that is very strong. And, the businesses need the workforce. You hear it talked about all the time, finding talent, retaining talent. And that talent is sitting in the classrooms of Western Massachusetts. So we really need to play that up. And at the same time, the businesses are also looking for a connection to the research and development that is happening at all of our colleges and universities. And so that becomes important. And quite honestly, the colleges and universities are in a competitive environment. They are seeing, flat. The age of the students in terms of that population is relatively flat. And so they're competition for those students to come here. So really workforce and the colleges all really align up, and economic growth all line up, because workforce is, economic growth. That is the key. And that is a real strong suit that we need to play off of much more than I think we have.
I think that, as you point out, we do have a lot of young people when you look at colleges and universities. However, historically, retaining those young people has been a very big challenge. Are you seeing anything that's being done differently that you sort of see a glimmer of hope in retaining some of those folks?
Yeah, I think there are. I mean, a lot of it is when the students are making the decision on where am I going to go to school, they're looking at, what is the community like? So we have a really good story to tell when we look at the region. We have our urban centers, which you start to see, when you're looking at Springfield, you have, new restaurants and clubs opening up, right on Main Street. So it is starting to get to be a little more vibrant. You have all of our communities talking about housing, because the students and the population, both the younger population, but also some of the older population that is looking to stay in the communities they are, want to be downtown so that they can be walk to where they work or telecommute and then walk to their entertainment opportunities, their cultural opportunities. They don't necessarily want to have a car. So you're starting to see the cities and the communities here in Western Massachusetts, play to that, look to make strategic investments on that. The students also look to say, what is the job, not just the first job, but what is the career pathway that I'm going to take? So we need to be able to create those first jobs, but also the second and third jobs, because they move through those ranks pretty quickly.
Overall, the report, a lot of good news. Some sort of bad news in that if you look at sales tax receipts for motor vehicles and for sales in general, that declined 3.9%. So if people have jobs, they're earning money, they aren't spending it. Is that a signal that people are concerned that there's another recession coming?
Well, it also may show that we're looking to tax the sales tax in kind of an archaic way, because that's really set up and designed that you go to the local store, you buy something, you pay a sales tax. I don't know, I think the average person, I'll speak for myself, we see the little smiley box get delivered to our front door a lot of times. That doesn't necessarily always come with a sales tax built in.
Amazon is what you're referring to.
Well,
there.
I wasn't going to get into names, but the smiley,
just online retailers, then let's go broader.
Absolutely, so it's changing how people, how people shop, how they buy, and our taxing system is based off, again, an older model. So that sales tax number has ebbed and flowed and really has not necessarily been consistent with a vibrant economy. That number has still lagged. So it's not that people aren't buying things; they're just buying things differently than they have in the past, which may be bypassing that taxing system. So I do think that that's a larger discussion, a policy discussion that the political leaders are going to have down the road. So that's one thing. And in terms of cars, again, I mean, a lot of the millennial are really not looking to necessarily have a car. They would like to bike and walk and take public transportation or Uber or Lyft or whatever is out there. So again, it's a changing habit, and we need to change with that.